All right, so you built something that technically works, but you kind of hate it at this point. Your business is taking all of your time and attention, and it's more stress than it's worth because things aren't going as well as they could on the inside. So you are busy and capped out because it's taking all of your time. You're wearing all of the hats. You've become a jack of all trades. And for most founders, it gets to the point where they're taking the sales calls, all of them, but they can't scale to building a sales team because they're not making enough money yet, or they don't have enough calls to hit the next level. But right now, they're in hustle mode. The entire pipeline is filled, and the gap between where they are and where they want to be is a higher close rate. The problem is that you're not closing enough of your calls, and that if you're being honest with yourself, you're probably only closing the people who were going to close no matter what. So the game then is, how do we close more of the people who are maybes, people who are on the fence? And this is where becoming a master of sales becomes essential. Sales is the one thing that will make or break your business. Sales is the foundational layer, and I learned this after struggling for so long. I was working my ass off, and by metrics, I was successful. I had a 6-figure business my first year, and then my second year in business, I had a cash physical therapy practice, and I had doubled my revenue. But oh my God, I had burned out myself. Every relationship, my boyfriend dumped me. I was burning the candle at both ends, and I resented my business, but I was like, I just have to keep doing it. And so if that's you, I understand you and I see you because I have been in that season. And the difference was that, like, I was working so hard to go get more leads, and then I would have a hard time on the sales calls. I would feel weird about, like, pushing people or poking holes in their logic because I was like, I don't want to be icky. I don't want to pressure people into buying. And so then they would go, and it would be a no. And then at the end of the month, I would look at all the leads that I had had and all of the opportunity to hit really good numbers. And I would be so disappointed and frustrated and terrified because I knew that was what was going to happen the next month. And so what did I have to do? In order to then make more money, I had to multiply the effort that I was doing. And I was already working so much. And so if you are increasing the volume of your marketing to bring in more leads to make up for the ones that you're not closing, you're just turning up the faucet when your bucket has holes in it. And it's not sustainable. You're gonna burn out. Your relationships are gonna suffer. And if you really think about it, like, do you really want to live your life like that for the next year, 5 years, 10 years? No. That's not why you got into business. And so if we take a step back, what's the most efficient thing you can do? Instead of cranking up the faucet of your marketing and getting more leads, it's becoming a master of sales. So the thing that I have seen over and over again, and the reason why so many founders are not closing these deals, is because they're missing what's called the secondary conversation. And it's a really big piece of the conversation that isn't audible, because it's the conversation that's happening in the prospect's head. And you have to be able to use your questions and tactically ask them so that you can pull whatever conversation is happening in their head up to the surface where they can say it out loud, and then you can handle that. And I say handle, but it's more about diffusing the bomb. You have to diffuse the secondary conversation, and only then, once it's no longer an issue, are you going to get the sale. But if you don't pull it up to the surface and then address it on the call, it's going to be in their head, and that's the reason that they're not buying. So for a lot of people, maybe it's the past experiences that they've had. Maybe it's the limiting beliefs about, well, it's not going to work for me. Maybe it's about their own self-belief of, I can't do it, or what if I fail? Maybe it's a combination of all of the things. Maybe they don't trust you. Maybe you haven't built enough value. But unless you go through that call and you peel back layer after layer after layer and get a good understanding, and you're able to read between the lines of what they're saying, you're going to miss it. So the skill that you have to acquire is, How do I make the invisible visible? How do I start reading between the lines? Part of it is you have to get good at understanding the way that people think, the way that decisions are actually made, what gets people to move, and from there, be able to work in reverse. So based on like how somebody's talking, based on their tone, based on the stories that they're telling you, you have to be able to decide which threads you're going to pull based on what the most likely conversation is that's happening in your head. And if you can understand people and what causes people to do certain things, you're going to know which questions to ask. And that's one of the things that I teach my clients in my program. It's about understanding people. What makes people respond the way that they do? So we all have patterns and coping mechanisms and stories that we tell ourselves. Even you sitting on the sales call. Especially noticeable when you're 0 for 7 and you show up to the call and you're stressed and you're trying to be chill, but you're like, I need to close this fucking call, right? And so does that affect your sale? Yeah, absolutely. Because then when you get to the end of the call, and this is what I see all the time, somebody objects and you freak out. You go one of two ways. You either go down the rabbit hole of, I just lost another one, and then you don't even try, and you put your attention on the next call that you have in 20 minutes, instead of talking to the person in front of you who wants to buy from you. You just have to excavate and talk it out. And the other thing that I see that happens is we start speeding up because your discomfort with talking about the objection, or maybe you don't want to be icky. Maybe you don't want to be pushy. Your discomfort, you're like projecting that onto them. And when you want to rush off the call, your prospect feels that and they mirror that energy. Psychologically, like that's what happens is when we hold a certain type of energy or cadence, or if I'm feeling nervous, I'm putting that onto my prospect. So if you cannot be a leader on the call, you have to be able to do the work and like unwind the own thread, basically the yarn ball that's in you, and be like, okay, what's at the core of this? How do I prevent this from affecting me in the future on these calls? Because you need to be steady. You are a leader on these calls. And the concept of like fake it till you make it when you're sitting in front of a prospect, that's bullshit. You have to be regulated. And you can do all of the breath work and the jumping up and down and the affirmations before the call. But what happens in the middle of the call when somebody throws you a curveball and your energy changes? You have to be able to manage it, or you have to be able to do the work to be able to control what things even affect you anymore. And that's one of the most powerful things that you can do, is be able to show up to a call, stay on the call, completely neutral the entire time, regardless of what happens, because you don't even care about the sale. You are so detached, and they feel that, and that then makes them want to buy because they feel safe buying, because they realize that, oh, it's not about what's in it for you. It's truly about them. And so then your focus, because it's not about getting the sale, your focus becomes about getting them to make a decision. And the truth of the matter is, people have all of these secondary conversations, and by the end of the call, if you don't unravel it, it's not that they're confident in a no. It's just that they're not confident in a yes yet. And so the number of people that they were just like, oh, well, I'm not sure, but it's not a hard no, end up being no's. So if you can sit there and help them come to a decision that is best for them, and help them get out of their own way because you care about them and you are the kind of leader who can help pull somebody up and forward and do something for themselves that's going to benefit them, that's going to get them the thing that they already want, that they got on the call for because this thing is important to them, then you both end up winning. Regardless of what the outcome of the call is, it's about making the decision. So these secondary conversations, how do we become more aware of them? First, it starts with you need to be aware of your own secondary conversations and what it sounds like. So humans relate to other humans because we all have the human condition in common. We've all thought negative things about ourselves. We've all made conclusions about past experiences and how they affected us and things that don't make sense. We've all been scared before. And when you begin to unravel some of that within yourself, that's one of the things that I teach in my program. When you begin to do all of that and be able to show up on calls and understand why you are the way that you are and what are the things that actually influence you, and then you actually learn how to stop letting that control you, you can now see it in other people because you are familiar with it. It allows you to read between the lines. It allows you to be more empathetic because you understand, but it also allows you to then be more tactical with your questions. And you are following a 7-step framework of how you're asking questions and what information that you need. But your understanding of their secondary conversation is because you understood yours first. And so that's one of the things that I think gets so missed in the sales industry. People are like, just do your breath work, have the same morning routine, get your workout in, show up like good and ready to go. Great. That's great beginning of the day energy. But what about the middle of the day? What about the middle of the call when the unexpected happens? Like, you got to be ready for that too. And you have to be ready to then end one call and then get into the next call showing up in your rehearsed state. You got to get all the garbage out of your head, just like we're trying to get all the garbage out of the prospect's head and help them make a decision with clarity. The problem is that there's so much mud and fogginess in your own mind because emotions and all of the past experiences that we've had leading up to this point and all of the financial stressors and the this and what if that and my boss, and or if I'm my own boss, like what about my employees and what about payroll and marketing expenses and I need to be able to pay for my rent this month. These are all of the things that also play a factor. So how do we detach from all of that? You have to do a detachment process. I don't think that you have to go on some deep healing journey to be able to understand all of that so much to the extent that you have worked through that within yourself and then you can see that in your prospect. You don't. You can if you want to, but the purpose of the work that must be done is to make more money. So what's the minimum effective dose that you can do to be able to not get in your own way and to help someone get out of theirs? You have to do like tactical processes. So set aside 10, 20, 30 minutes to work through something specific, have it not be an issue again. And because now you've worked through that and you understand it, when you see that show up on a call in a prospect, you now know how to speak to it. You can pull on your own story because storytelling is amazing when it comes to shifting perspective or when it comes to mirroring something to a prospect. If we want to shift their belief or show them something, a different way to think about it, that becomes important because your role on that call is to coach. It's to identify, to excavate, and to coach what doesn't make sense. And the only way you learn how to coach is to become aware of it and to become someone who is able to pull someone up and forward. And you can't do that if you haven't gotten yourself up and forward, if you haven't pulled yourself out of the way. Those are some of the biggest things. That's the power of the secondary conversation. And the other piece is about using that as your baseline and knowing how to, like, if we look at this like baseball analogy, that teaches you how to react to ground balls and pop flies, and it teaches you how to move in different ways on the call, regardless of what's happening on it. But the framework, the structure that you come back to, the information that you need, the rapport that you're building, the pain, because people move away from pain. That's why they move towards a buying decision. Moving away from pain creates momentum towards the buying decision. You fall back on that because that also is your foundation. And so you have to have both of those. And those begin working together and weaving into something that just becomes a normal human conversation. I think the thing that turns people off is they show up to a sales call, they know it's a sales call, especially in the B2B world. You can't get away with as much as you can get away with maybe in B2C. But people are very aware when you're reading or when something is scripted or when it doesn't fit them. And then the same thing when they have their secondary conversations, like you're using somebody else's objection handling framework to try to overcome their objection, and it had nothing to do with their secondary conversation. And so what you're saying, like, sounds good in theory, like it's a sexy objection handling framework. Doesn't work for them. And that's why, like, sometimes it doesn't land. And it also depends on how you deliver it and your tonality and your personality and the rapport that you've built. Which is also why, with sexy objection handling frameworks, that, like, some people can use a certain overcome well, and you give that to another closer, and they are like, I just really upset somebody. That did not go well. Like, I've been there before when I was new, and I was like, okay, this is the thing to say. Especially when you're doing more of like identity or emotional based selling instead of logic. Because you're like, that's what comes across icky, is when you are not being genuine. And so the last piece of this process in the human conversation is allowing yourself to have some personality. Like, let yourself be you on your sales calls. So many people think that they need to show up and like be so buttoned up, but that's actually one of the things that makes the other people uncomfortable, because they feel like they have to be a certain way, which means that they are hiding parts of themselves. You're not going to get their secondary conversation. So if you can have a little bit more personality and be less rigid, like whoever you are, weave that into your process of how you're asking your questions about the secondary conversation, of how you're going back and forth in the framework, how you're building the rapport. Because at the foundation, it's about being genuine and then also being honest. Some of the best conversations that I have had, even if somebody wasn't a perfect fit, I told them that. And you know what happened? They were like, oh my gosh, you are a breath of fresh air. Wow. You're not trying to sell me something that you think isn't the best fit, and like you're actually telling me that it's not, but like you could help me most of the way. I want to work with you. You know why? Because it builds the rapport, and it sets the precedent up front that I will always be direct and honest with you. And so if you are that way on your calls, people will trust you more, because you're clearly not in it for yourself. Because it's not about you. It's about them, and it's about their result. And it's like, look, you could go either way. The point here is that it's about making a decision and giving yourself the authority to make the position and overcoming any limiting beliefs that get in the way of you making a decision. But if it's not the thing that's right for you, like, I don't want to push you down that road. And so one of my favorite, I will say, lines, I got it from a mentor. I got it from a mentor when talking to prospects, but it's like, look, regardless of how this goes, either way, at the end of the call, we part ways as friends. And it's so true. If you can build a rapport and have a human conversation, like, there's no reason that you should not have a good relationship after talking to somebody about the thing that they care deeply about and that they want most, their desire and their fears, for an hour, even 40 minutes. Like, they should trust you at that point. So yeah, like at the end of the call, regardless, we part ways as friends. So I think those are the biggest things. Number one is understanding the secondary conversation, having a framework that you can weave it in that's based on the psychology of how people make actual decisions and what gets them to move, to start, stop, or maintain a behavior. It's all psychology. Look up the trans-theoretical model stages of change if you really want to nerd out. That's what my doctorate research is on. You can look up trans-theoretical model stages of change, Dr. Caitlin Bell, and you'll see my research. But those are the most important pieces. And then on top of that, it's the authenticity and the personality, what makes you you, Because at the end of the day, people are buying you. They could find another way to solve their problem. There's a million ways to skin a cat. I hate that phrase, but like, they could find another way. Maybe they could find another coach, even if nobody has the exact same program as you. Now, hopefully that's not true. But what I'm saying is, it's the importance of being you. Because that's the reason that a lot of people are going to buy with you, because they trust you and they want to work with you. So layer that in, be honest, like say it how it is on the call, and like don't be there for yourself, be there for them. If you have any questions, if you want to know what you can do to improve your sales process, you can go to my Instagram, and on any of my posts, comment the word multiplier or multiply. Comment the word multiply, and I will send you my sales multiplier tool. Basically, you go in, answer a bunch of questions, and then it's going to give you a very specific outline of the things that you need to do to be able to improve your close rate. Because right now, the way that you're building your business, and likely the way that you are living your life as a result, isn't sustainable. Because you're trying to outwork a poor close rate, which means more time from you. A jack of all trades is a master of none. As a founder, what got you here is not what's going to get you free of this level into the next one. You must become better at sales. So I hope this was helpful. Go get the sales multiplier tool from my Instagram and send me a message if you have any questions. I'll see you next time.